Lisa, welcome to Adulting with Autism.
Thank you so much for having me here, April. This is such a huge service for so many listeners.
So, for my listeners out there, tell them who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name's Lisa Rabinowitz, and I am a couples counselor, and I work with the neurodiverse population. I really felt like there was so many couples that were coming in and being very misunderstood by other couples therapists. And so I made this my niche, and I speak internationally, and I help couples internationally on this topic. My real passion. It really is a passion.
So, I know many couples probably arrive saying, we love each other, but we can't talk to each other. What does that look like in a day to day relationship?
So, of course, it could look a lot of different ways, but commonly, they are finding they're fighting over little things, and they'll come and they'll say, "It's so silly. We love each other. How can we fight over, the toothpaste cover, right? Or, you left the cabinet open, or you interrupted me again, or, why do you have to be so logical?" And it's helping them slow down and see each other and understand each other, and so often they don't. Like, I say you can love each other so much, but at the end of the day, that doesn't help you work together differently. So you have to learn how to do that.
So, what do you want neurodivergent young adults out there to know about communication and conflict? Because I feel like they don't get it in school. So here they are in these relationships and it's a dumpster fire.
It's a dumpster fire. Oh, yes, I definitely agree with that. So the first thing I identify is, what are the typical patterns? And excuse me, I've identified 18 different uh, patterns that frequently the neurodiverse person will find themselves, like, they'll be in the middle of something and they're like dumping and dumping and dumping, and the other partner's like, "Are you over yet? Are you?" Um, and we haven't even discussed this piece, but this is an important piece around communication. Is the couple, is it neurodiverse and neurotypical, right? Or too neurodiverse? And a lot of times people come in and say, like, well, we both have autism, but it's showing up so different, right? So I don't want you to assume just because, you're so logical and, everything's literal, that your partner is going to show up that way. And I feel honestly nowadays that there's such a spectrum that in the next few years, we're going to hopefully understand it even better. But I want you to identify, what are the patterns for you in the communication? Where are you getting stuck? So I say, here's a few of them. Let's like identify them, right? If we're aware of them, then it doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, how did that happen again? It's like, okay, we do this thing, and now how do we do this differently? And then I actually have like 8 or 9 for the typical the neurotypical. They're doing many also, that a lot of times they think like, "Oh, I know how to communicate." And I'm like, "Well, maybe, maybe not." And especially with a neurodiverse person, we have to bring empathy and understanding for both of you, and understand that you're going to communicate differently no matter who you are. And what are we going to do next? So it's awareness, and now what are the steps to help each other? And that's the key here.
So, how do impulsivity, forgetfulness, time blindness, that emotional regulation show
Yeah,
up in like a typical couple's argument?
goodness. Um, so one of the things I talk about is, when we want to repair something, we set a time to meet, because you need to calm down. Like, a lot of times it gets so heated. So it's like, okay, everybody, let's calm down. And now we're coming back. So let's just say the fight happened at 8 and we said, we're going to come back at 9. Well, guess what? It's 9 o'clock. And how often have I heard in my office, well, I was sitting on the couch and it was 9 o'clock. And at 9:05, I gave up and I left. And I frequently am like, okay, well, you know your partner. This is a challenge. Now, it does I'm not giving anybody excuses with the time management, like, oh, okay, well, that means that you can show up at 10 o'clock and it's okay. No, but let's not set ourselves up for failure either. So what are we going to do? And I have them make agreements. Is it you're putting an alarm? And the alarm going off at 9 o'clock doesn't mean you're showing up at 9:01. You're showing up, I don't know. Right. So can you set time earlier? Like maybe the alarm needs to go off at 8:55. Maybe it needs to go out not only off at 8:55, but at 8:50, but 8:55, and then maybe 9 o'clock also. And some people love it and it works great. And then other couple, that doesn't work for me. I'll just keep swiping. You could have 25 alarms on there. I'll keep swiping. Right. So I don't want to put the whole mental load on the other person, but it could be you go and find the other partner. Again, not the greatest solution, but sometimes that's what we do. Or we have to brainstorm together. We have to figure out what are we going to do because again, we don't want to not repair the relationship and fix up whatever the issue is because of time management, right? Because then it feels so like I'm ready to talk, but you didn't show up. And now I feel like you don't care, right? That's that next step. Whether it's time management, whether it's emotion regulation, disorganization, all the different things that are showing up. If I forgot to pay the bills, and I hear all the time, literally every day, you don't care. I can't trust you. You betrayed me. And I'm like, whoa, 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 let's slow this down a little bit. Okay. Maybe that thing didn't happen. But again, did we have any kinds of tools, coping skills to deal with that thing? Or we just said to our partner, you pay all the bills. Well, that's a setup again for failure because the likelihood if you have ADHD and sometimes autism, again, everybody's showing up differently. We don't want to generalize, but it could be a challenge. Um, we've got to, we have the, auto, every month it like, let's put that in the system. Let's make our lives easy, right? Like set ourselves up for success. It just pays it automatically. Great. That's not cheating. That's working together in a smart way.
Now, you're certified in both the Gottman Method and PACT.
Yeah.
What is each of those methods and how do you blend them together in your work?
Sure. It's a great question. So when I was actually a trauma therapist, and when I took a little break, I was coming back, I said, I need the best training. And so I looked and I looked, and at that point, it was, let's go with Gottman. He's, internationally renowned. He did 40 years of research. I wanted a scientific evidence-based approach. So many of my friends were like, are you sure you want to be a couples therapist? And I said, yes, I really do. And so I started with the training and you go through level 1, level 2, level 3, and then you get certified. And it's a fabulous training, lots of skills, lots of tools. But I kept feeling like I was missing things in the office and I didn't know exactly what could it be. So then I started doing other trainings and I have EFT and narrative and IFS. I have a lot of other trainings. I don't focus on those because I'm not certified in them, but I definitely have training. But I found PACT and I was like, wow, this is the most comprehensive program. PACT stands for, by the way, it's very long, Psychobiological Approach to Couples Therapy. I won't say that 5 times fast for you. So, but it is also very scientific, evidence based on how you work with a couple. And the twist here was the only couples therapy approach that talks about the brain, the biology. So yeah, it's the only one. And it's really intense. And I'm not a science person. So it was a little bit difficult for a while. But I kept going level 1, level 2, level 3, learning more, learning more, learning more until became certified. I coach for them, I speak for them. But I I realized that after the first training, I'll tell you what happened. So it's a very, very intense, really more intense than any other certification program. Um, I came home after 4 days of literally like 12 hours of training, and I arrived home at 5 a.m. But I was so excited for my first client. Right, so land at 5. don't really sleep much. 8 o'clock in the morning, first client comes in. And I'm like, we were talking about biology. I think this couple's ADHD. Now, I had no training in ADHD. No one talked about it. I was told like, oh, that's silly. It's made up. And I'm like, no, 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 there's something going on in here. So I practiced and I said, hey guys, can we do something a little different today? And they're like, oh, sure, Lisa, whatever you want. By the end of the session, they said, whatever you just learned, because I told them that I was away on learning that and training that weekend. They said, whatever you learned, keep learning it. It was amazing. And I was like, yes. So I started learning more about the brain and how, when you're talking anxiety, depression, trauma, neurodiversity, you have to understand the brain. You have to understand emotional dysregulation. If not, you are missing a big component in your office. And so that's how I started on this whole track. So it's been amazing.
How does PAC like pay close attention to the nervous system and attachment?
Yeah. And actually, I'm sorry. I remember you asked me a question I didn't answer of how I blend them together. So let me go to that one first. I forgot. I'm sorry. Um, I really show up with the client and I listen for what they need. And every couple's a little bit different. So, I might have some basic skills, but I just say like, I have this big bucket. And if somebody's needing some really like simple, like we never learned how to communicate, forget our family of origin. You don't even want to hear stories about those. So just tell us some basic skills. How do we even have a conversation? And I literally probably daily talk about how do you talk together? How do you listen? Listening is not, I call it the ping pong, where we're talking like this back and forth, back and forth. Nobody's listening. We're just responding and we're usually like ready to take a jab, more like it. And so I'll teach some couples that. And then other couples are needing other things, what we call and when we discuss about secure functioning, safety, attachment is much more of the pact approach. And many couples come in and they have wounds from their past, if not all of them, not maybe not just some. And we need to pay attention to, what's showing up in our office. What is this couple needing? And so because I have a really big bucket of like, we can use this and we can do that and let's practice this, it's much more of a let's practice things approach. And so that's where I just sort of take all the different things and I'll just pull in really what the couple needs. But now to your next question, which of course I forgot already. You asked me and I did, I forgot about it. Do you remember the question?
Does PAC pay close attention to the nervous system
Nervous
and
system.
the attachment?
Yes, thank you. So, I will say that I've actually gone another another step. I'm always training. I love. I want to bring in as many tools as possible. So I'm going to answer that in a slightly different way. And that is with the ADHD and couples who are on the spectrum, or I know people call it different things, autistic. We'll just call it neurodiverse, I guess, right now. People frequently are struggling with emotional regulation. I mean, there are typical struggles with emotional regulation, but because of the impulsivity, because there's not a break that works so well unless you really have specifically identified, like, I'm struggling in this area and gotten help, I decided I was going to do another thing, which is I started training in breath work. I used to do meditation with couples, but I really felt like I needed to do something else to really give a very specific tool to couples around emotional regulation. And so I'm using breath work now, which is just like another layer. Of course, Pack, we talk about the nervous system. Of course, I don't necessarily say to them, nervous system. I usually say, like, seems like, that's making you angry. I try to identify, they usually can identify more of like I'm feeling scared or I'm feeling frustrated, overwhelmed. So I usually try to use those kind of terms. And then the people will be like, yeah. And I'll say, like, do you notice it anywhere in your body? because it is an approach that talks about what we understand as somatic, right? Like things like sometimes people say like my throat is just so tight I can't even get a breath in, or I feel a heavy weight on my chest. So I'm able to use PACT and help them understand their nervous systems, which is so important for neurodiversity. But now I'm adding this other layer on because a lot of times I'm teaching um, a few techniques, but we'll usually spend maybe 15 minutes on how do we emotionally regulate, but I really feel like we need so much more time and attention on the nervous system and how we regulate. Because if I can't regulate myself, when we talk about this impact, we're supposed to co regulate, right? But I need to regulate myself. I can't co regulate and help you and take care of you if I can't even take care of myself. I have to start with me. Right? So my work with the breath work is how do we take care of ourselves? And then layer on, how do I now take care of my partner? So it's packed with this extra piece in here, which is so important. And attachment styles definitely trigger. We have what's called insecure avoidant, insecure anxious, and secure. And people call there's other things, but we'll just call it that for right now. And those attachment styles definitely happen in neurodiverse. The insecure will be more common with neurodiverse couples. And because of that, their attachment styles are really getting triggered, right? You come home from work and you go, I just need 30 minutes to myself. Now let's talk about rejection sensitivity dysphoria, right? That could really trigger somebody if you have ADHD, but it has nothing to do with you, my partner. It has a lot to do with what we'll call insecure avoidant. I take time to regulate away from you, but that can be so hurtful to the other partner, right? So there we have to we I try to help them understand there's so many pieces all happening at the same time. And it happens over some time of, slowing down conversations and really providing information and then seeing it in real time. When like I said, when someone comes home from work and wants 30 minutes to themselves, that's real time. Like, what happens to you? How do you feel? What's happening with the other person? Why do they need 30 minutes? And so it's very important conversations.
So you have a book called Why Won't You Stop Interrupting Me? Simple Solutions for ADHD Couples.
Yeah.
So what problem were you trying to solve when you wrote the book?
Right. So many individuals love coming to counseling and they really feel like this is so helpful. But I know that some people, either their partner won't come and it's hard to help them by themselves. So that was one reason I wanted the book to be out there. But two, I feel like it's a reinforcement. Like we can work in therapy and we do so many pieces of the book, but when you can come home and read it and reinforce, like, oh, yeah, we were working on, for instance, attachment, and there's a chapter on attachment, there's a chapter on emotional regulation, a chapter on communication. I, I want them to be able to say, oh, right. And I understand Lisa is talking in session about how, I, overshare. She has a solution. Like, I gave a solution in session too, but like, "Oh, yeah, that's what she was talking about. Oh, yeah, I see that." And it just helps them really reinforce what we're doing in session. Now, of course, I have couples who haven't seen me, I'm sure, and have bought the book, but can I give you some really exciting news? Because it's like hot off the press here, April. Can I
Yeah.
share?
Yeah.
My audiobook is finished. So let me tell you what happened. So many people reached out to me and they said, I'm not going to read your book, Lisa. I would like to, but I I struggle with reading. So often this happens with ADHD. And if it's not dyslexia, it's just the attention. I'm not going to do it. So they would say, do you have an audiobook? Do you have an audiobook? And I'm like, no, no, no. And I'm like, I need to do an audiobook. So I practice for months. How do you speak, you know, on an audiobook? How do I be the narrator? And we finished, and the producer just finished and literally sent it over a few days ago. We're reviewing it before it goes out there, but we're hoping in like 2 weeks it's going to be out there. And I really, really, yeah, I'm so excited. I'm really hoping the people that wanted to read it but don't want to read will listen to it, because you can do it in the car, you can do it while you're cooking. It's so much, I understand it's more convenient. So I'm hoping that it will really be an extra piece that we can reach more people, because I still have today women coming in, more women, but, like, I didn't know. And I honestly, I've had men too. Like, I didn't know, and I've had people working with me that, like, "You really see some signs that I have ADHD?" So, sometimes they've never been diagnosed, and I'm talking to them about it. Sometimes they've just been diagnosed, and they're coming and going, "Oh my gosh, well, what does this mean? How does this impact me? How does this impact my relationship?" And then some have been diagnosed for many, many years and sometimes haven't really worked on this, and how it impacts themselves, how it impacts them, and how it impacts the relationship. So I'm very excited. So I'm glad I could share it.
So, what are a few practical shame-free strategies you suggest for interrupting less? Because I know that's
Sure.
like a big thing. I mean, I'm really bad at it. And handling the interruptions.
Right. So, and I'm glad that you said shame, because so often the person does feel shame and it's never discussed. They make promises like, "Well, I'll not do it again." And I'm like, "You know what? Don't make that promise. The likelihood is it will happen again." So how do you we start with compassion for ourselves, right? How do I really feel compassion? And my partner isn't the first one that's told me that I interrupted. I started as a little kid, answer, teacher, teacher, they got so much criticism for interrupting at home, being told, like, "Can you just shut up already? Like, stop talking." I have people being told that, like, "Can't you just push the pause button?" I wish you had a pause button. So the negativity from such an early age, right? And now here I am as an adult. I'm in a relationship. My partner's saying similar things to me, and we need to address it. We need to address how all of that has landed with you. So I start with that. Then I start with the if it's a non ADHD partner, with understanding. They're not trying to be rude. I hear it once a week, if not more. "My partner's so disrespectful." And I go, "Why is your partner so disrespectful?" "Because they interrupt me." It has nothing to do with disrespect. That is such a misunderstanding of your partner. So let's bring education to the other person. And then at the end of the day, I talk, and PACT talks a lot about this, the idea of agreements. We have to make agreements. We know this is going to happen. So what are we going to do? And I have each couple come up with a plan. So because we can predict it's going to happen. So now what's the next step? And people get very creative on what they're gonna do. So for some people, it's the partner will do this, and it could go either way. It could be the non-ADHD, if it's a non-ADHD person, saying to the partner, "Wait, wait, 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 give me a minute. I'll finish my thought," right? And then the other person, sorry," right? And they'll continue their thought for a minute, and then they'll break for their partner. It could be the the person who's the neurodiverse partner who wants to say something and frequently will interrupt, that they'll go and they'll cue their partner, like, meaning, like, "I want to say something, you know, can you wrap it up for a minute so I can just share my thought?" And I, 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 um, I want to go back for a minute about if it's a neurodiverse person, if it's it's a neurotypical person, and the idea that that frequently it's that they want to say something, like something's in their mind, and they don't that neurotypical doesn't understand that the reason they're blurting it out is if they don't say it, they can't pay attention to the conversation. Right? So you can talk for another 5 or 10 minutes, but all they're thinking about is, I want to say this, I want to say this, I want to say this. So you've really lost them. So you can keep talking. And when they're like, oh, like I kept talking and my partner didn't hear anything else. And I'm like, no, they didn't hear anything else. They're like, oh, well, yeah, it makes sense. Like, and it helps them give more buy-in to why we should stop and pause. So that's one possibility, sort of holding up a finger or some kind of like flagging the partner, cueing the person somebody wants to talk. The other thing is if we can make, in my book, I call it the nook. This nook is a place that we talk. So we don't talk about anything serious in the kitchen. I'm washing the dishes. My back is to my partner. My partner's sitting in the refrigerator trying to pull out food for dinner. This is not our time to talk because for sure we're going to be interrupting each other. So if something's important and we don't want interruption, let's find our space, right? We're going to talk on the couch. We're going to talk over here, wherever that is. And then I describe like, what kinds of things do you feel would be comforting, soothing, you'd like to have in that space? Because if you're going to be talking, you want to be comfortable there. But a notebook, I need you to have pen and paper. Right. So one thing, I said like you could cue your partner, like you want to say something. What you could also do is cue your partner, hang on, write it down, and then let them continue, right? So now is down. I can go back to focusing. And then my partner go, okay, right? So then they go back and talk. And if they need to, like, hang on, I want to write that down, write it down. It's now off of my mind and down on the paper. I won't forget it because it's right there. Um, and that's just a couple examples of what some of the couples will talk about and make agreements to. And again, it has to be something that both people are comfortable with. That's very, very important. It can't just work for one person and the other person's like, no, I don't like that idea. So if you don't like the idea, I'll say like, you can suggest something, right? And if the other person doesn't like it, great, then you suggest something back. Right? And if when I suggest something, hopefully someone's going to like it soon, right? Then if you don't like it, okay, then now you've got to suggest it. And in this way, like we're working as teams, right? Like, if we're playing basketball, I'm not just going to hog the ball, right? That's not teamwork, right? I'm going to pass you the ball, right? And you're going to pass me the ball, right? So that's that kind of feel that we're working together to solve this problem and we'll come up with something that works for both of us.
How do old attachment wounds tend to replay themselves in adult relationships?
We could have a whole podcast on that. I'm going to say in short because it's such a great question, but to go into depth and do it really justice, I would need a lot of time. So in short, I'll say the following: we frequently pick partners. I'm going to say that again. We frequently pick partners that are familiar to us and directly hit our wounds.
Lisa, this sounds terrible.
Well, here it actually is I tell couples it's an opportunity, right? So let's just say I'm going to make up something, right? Like I grew up and I was always yelled at. I was always doing, right? Again, frequently a feeling that an ADHD or somebody with autism might feel. I wasn't doing this right. I wasn't doing that right. I wasn't doing this right. So that's going to be a wound, right? Like I always feel like I'm getting it wrong. I'm doing something wrong. I'm never good enough. These are very common things that I'm hearing, right? So now I pick a partner, very organized, very on top of everything, very over functioning, got everything ducks in a row, right? Very common. And I forgot to pay the bill. I forgot to pick this up at the grocery store. I let that go and I didn't deal with it. And didn't take care of it. And so what's going to happen? Frequently, they're going to yell. So it's not instead of mom or dad, or whoever yelling, now it's my partner yelling. And we have an opportunity. We can replay that, but that's like pouring salt in the wound. Okay? Instead, this is an opportunity that we can heal it. So let's slow down and make a different decision on how not only are we going to handle, for instance, executive functioning things in a different way, and frequently they need a lot of skills in there if they're not coming in with them, but how are we going to communicate differently? Is that how we're going to work together? Like we scream at each other? Is that working? Is that serving the relationship? No. So we can doesn't mean that we can't be upset. Doesn't mean that we can't be disappointed, but is yelling really doing anything for this relationship? Usually people say no. And so let's try something different. But if we don't know differently, then we're going to just do what we know. So now it's again us working not only on the executive functioning piece, but how do we work together in a different way? Because, you know, he'll remember next time if I scream it at him. And I'm like, you think did it work the 25 other times you did it? No. Why is it going to work this time? It's not. So we have other things that we could do. So that's our job.
So for somebody whose partner is ADHD and they love them to death, but they feel like a project manager or a parent, what
Yes.
boundaries or changes do they need to make it better?
Right. That is one of the very common things that we see that this, parent, child, victim, rescuer, there's different like patterns that we try to identify. It's a power dynamic, which is not healthy, not helpful. And so the first part, always start awareness, right? We have to start seeing it. We have to start noticing it. We have to be not judging it for this is, oh my gosh, we're doing it again. But okay, we're observing, like, here it's showing up again. And then we have to go into, well, what other choices? What are the other choices? I can nag, I can repeat myself 1,000 times. Maybe they'll do it then. Not working, right? So how frequently the neurodiverse person is going to need some skills and tools to be able to show up as a, functioning adult, which I have to tell you, it sounds so like, of course, like, why isn't the person adulting? Well, I can't tell you how often people aren't. I mean, we're talking even sometimes basic things, brushing teeth, showering, eating, so many things that just, I forgot, I got busy, I hyper focused on something. So we want to address that. If we're struggling there, I want you to have tools to help that. But the other piece is your job of nagging, being like, I know better, I know what to do, partner isn't helping either. So you're going to need to choose a different role. You're supposed to be equals, and that's not equal when we're like this, right? Power imbalance. Right? I'm better than you. That creates a lot of animosity and resentment on both parts. And so, again, we're going to come back, sit down, and say, what could this look like? And couples are going to have to sometimes get creative here. Like, sometimes people will say, like, I'll tell you once, that's it, right? And and then we're going to have to figure it out because we can't be the project manager.
Right.
Right? It doesn't work. And so many times people are trying like, oh, I'll just help you. It's just this one time I'll take care of it for you. No, it's not going to be one time. And taking care of it isn't building up the person with neurodiversity. It's only continuing the pattern of I'm not good enough. I can't do it. No, that's not an option here. So we have to come up with a different plan. And it sometimes takes time to figure out how to do it differently. But I sort of, use the analogy of it's like dancing. We're stepping on each other's toes. This isn't working. So let's, we get very, we have so much creativity And that's what's so beautiful about somebody with neurodiversity is they can think out of the box. So they can come up with solutions that frequently neurotypicals would never think like, oh, you want me to, like a whiteboard. I know it sounds so simple, but for some people, right? I'm visual. If I don't see it in front of me, then it doesn't exist. And I've had people buy whiteboards. There's so many things. There's an app called To-Do List that went from a couple who was thinking to a couple who's functioning now. So there's things out there. And if not, then we'll come up with something that's going to work for the two of you. And that's what we
So,
do.
for the listeners who worry they've already ruined everything, what do you want them to know about the possibility of repair?
First, I know I don't want to be dismissive, but you have not ruined everything. I have couples who literally have seen divorce attorneys, had papers like literally written out. All they needed to do was sign on the dotted line, literally sign on the dotted line. And they came to me and I said, I want, put those papers in the other room, put them in a closet, 2 months. In 2 months, you will see whether it's not going to be perfect in 2 months, but you're going to definitely see whether this is workable and doable. And boy, oh boy, you better be putting in a lot of work. And if you're not putting in work, I'm going to call you on it and be like, you might as well sign the papers because you're not doing anything, because you have to do something differently, right? You got to that place of feeling like, you know, this is over. We can't make it. We feel so helpless and hopeless. And again, so often it's because you don't have the right skills. If I tell you, you know what, I want you to build the house that you're living in, right? Or apartment or whatever. And you know what? I'm going to give you, I have some paper over here. I'm going to give you a paper. I've got a mic over here. I'm going to give you my mic. Maybe I have a pen over here. Go build the house. You're going to be like, yeah, you basically laughed. What are you joking? Like, I can't build a house with that. Well, so often couples, when they say, oh, like, this is a skill, it's simple. I could do that. And they do it. And I give them time to practice. I want you to do it in session. Do it a few times in session. Make sure it goes well. And then they come back after doing, they use use the skill outside of session. And they're feeling more collaborative and they're feeling more cooperative. And they go from this scary, the horror movies where you're in the basement and everything is
Yes.
scary and right, to being on the 5th floor and the 10th floor and finally in the penthouse. And made 180, it turned the relationship around. Maybe it's a 360. I don't know. We might not want to turn all the way around because we might be back where we left off. That might not be good. So maybe 180. We're going in a different direction. It's doable. You just need to know how to do it. And you can have the best intentions and you might not mean to hurt each other and you might not try to hurt each other, but you are. And so trying harder is like, how often did neurodiverse people get told that?
Exactly.
Just try harder. Trying harder is not going to fix this relationship. It's bringing in new things that will possibly, very likely, get you into a different place.
So, what would you suggest for someone whose partner isn't ready for therapy, but wants to change the emotional climate of the relationship?
So, other than reading my book, Why Won't You Stop Interrupting Me? Um, People do sometimes go to individual therapy. When someone comes to me, I tell them the following. We know from Gottman's research, he did tons of research, that when an individual goes to an individual therapist and talks about the relationship, what's going to happen? The likelihood is, I'm going to take your side. You're my client. Oh my gosh, that sounds awful. He did that. She did this. She said that. He did that. Whatever it is. And that's going to lead to divorce. And I've actually had couples who were meeting with me in individual therapy, and they're like, oh, we're talking about the relationship. And I said, and how does it go when you talk about the relationship? And they say the exact same thing. Sometimes I'll say, you know what, this is how I'm going to tell you how it's going in your individual therapy. I bet she or he takes your side, don't they? And they're like, yeah, they take my side. And I'm like, yeah, because we know from research that frequently is what happens. So I say, if you want to go to individual therapy and you want to work on your, you know, anxiety, you want to work on your depression, you want to work on your trauma, on your OCD, great. Go and talk to an individual therapist, but be very careful that if you're working with somebody as an individual to work on, how can I respond differently? I have a few individuals that I see because their partners won't come in. And but I'm very aware and conscious that if they start going into the complaining, I can't believe they did this and I can't believe that, like, is there another side? Is there another perspective? What's your role in here? Right? Like, all we can do is we have control over ourselves. We don't have control over the other person. So let's work on you, not your partner. It's so important to understand that. And it's possible. You just have to be sensitive and really be careful with that. So.
Okay, final question, Lisa. Where can people find you? Your website,
Sure.
newsletter, blogs, if they want to work with you or
Yeah.
explore?
Sure, thank you. So I do provide a free consultation to anybody who comes to me, and you can go on my website. That's the easiest way to find me. It's called counselorforcouples.com. Counselorforcouples.com. And it's not the couples four is not the number four, it's FOR. So counselorforcouples.com. You can find my book on Amazon soon, hopefully the audiobook. Um, you can look up, I guess you can Google my name, Lisa Rabinowitz. People find me that way too. And I'd be happy to talk to any of your listeners and see if I would be a good fit for them.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on to my podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so, so much for doing this. And you should just continue to reach so many people because there's such a need. Thank you.